Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on InRangeTV. We are today talking about the barrels and the handguards for the What Would Stoner Do 2017 rifles. These are one of the most critical specific components to the gun, and so we kind of wanted to make sure that they were good, and we had some pretty specific requirements for what we wanted that are really fundamental to the whole concept of the gun.
I don't know what could be more critical, really, when you think about it. I mean, that's the pressure-bearing surface of an AR-15.
Exactly.
So one of the things that came to mind is when you look at this is an original Colt SP1.
This is the literal what did Stoner do, right?
This is what Stoner did. Well, Stoner and Sullivan.
Sure.
And, bayonet, 20-round box magazine, aluminum materials, modern materials, polymer handguards. These are the triangular handguards. This is a early 1980s gun, but it is absolutely representative of the very first iteration of the M16.
Right.
Okay. So this is what they put out there. And when you handle one of these, if you've never handled or fired an SP1 in any way on the clock or anything like that, you come to find and really appreciate that when they started off with the AR-15 in this iteration, they had far more right than they had wrong.
Right.
This gun handles fantastic.
Yep.
More importantly, it carries fantastic.
Yep.
When you have to lug this thing up a hill or hike with it or whatever, this gun weighing 6 pounds is awesome.
It's fantastic.
It also has very little recoil. All of the recoil is in line with the system, which of course is retained in the modern AR-15. The sights are excellent.
Yep.
They're actually not adjustable in the field without doing it with tools, which is a good thing. They're until you get them hot, they're very accurate.
Right.
And so, and the recoil is nothing. That's I said that earlier, but to a degree, they got so much right with this.
And we wanted to take all of those components and do the best we could on those core principles with 2017.
Well, that's the principle of the What Would Stoner Do project, is that the AR-15 evolved from this iteration to the more modern world.
Right.
And in the process, a lot of the core beliefs and things they tried to achieve with this gun fell to the wayside.
Right.
Some of it was retained.
Yep.
A lot of it was lost. Of course, the inline recoil system with the buffer tube and all is still there.
Yep.
Barrels got thicker and heavier.
Right.
Accessories got thicker and heavier. Sights suddenly became wildly adjustable for field needs with elevation and windage. Front posts changed.
Yep.
A lot of things shifted over time. Magazine capacity went up, which was a good thing. But in that process, I think we've lost the modern AR, the M4, the M16A2, has lost some of the soul.
Yeah, the special sauce.
The special sauce that was this.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to bring back in a more modern iteration and guise with the What Would Stoner Do rifles.
So weight is one of the most fundamental, important principles to work with. And weight, in many ways, dictates everything else about the gun, because weight is a constant limiting factor. If we had some magic component that worked 100% perfectly, but it weighed 4 pounds, probably not something we can realistically put on the gun. And the barrel is the single place where you can either gain or lose the most weight.
And there's reason why the barrels increased mass and diameter over time.
Right.
The early manufacture of barrels and barrel manufacturing has changed dramatically in just short durations of time.
Yeah,
so
a couple decades.
This gun, when it was designed in the 60s, right, and it came out with this pencil barrel, as they called it then. The ability to manufacture a pencil barrel in 1960 or 1970 or 1980 or 1990 even, compared to the ability to manufacture a pencil barrel now, have changed.
Right.
Manufacturing capabilities, quality control, technologies have shifted in a way that they were trying to do this maybe a little ahead of its time.
Right. So the benefit of this, of course, is the weight. The problem with it is that, and this was one of the big complaints with these guns, when they got hot, and remember, this is kind of the first really practical machine gun being issued as a standard infantry rifle. M14s kind of had the capability, but it was often locked off.
Pretty much a disaster.
Yeah. If you shot this thing a lot, which it was really set up to make it very easy to shoot a lot, when the barrel got hot, rounds started wandering. And that's because you had a lot of unequalized stresses in the barrel. When the barrel gets hot, it's going to literally, on a very small scale, start warping. And you're going to get your shots thrown off in random directions by substantial margins. 3, 4, 5, 6 maybe minute of angle. And that's a big problem. You've got to, as soon as it gets hot, you can't hit your target. Okay, critical issue, we're going to make the barrel heavier so that it doesn't get hot as fast and it doesn't wander as much when it does get hot. Now, in 2017, thanks to much better technology, we don't have that trouble. We can have a pencil barrel. In fact, the barrels we picked here are even smaller in diameter than the original SP1 barrel, and yet, when it gets hot, doesn't change point of impact.
Well, if it does, it's so minimally so that it doesn't matter.
Right. It does not substantially.
I don't want to use extremes like doesn't do it at all. I'm not going to say that. However, we did test this, and we do have a video that may be out before this or after this, it doesn't matter, in which we fired this hot.
Yep.
And we found the zero to wander at least 4 inches at 100 yards.
Yep.
That's a 4 MOA shift. And the reason for that is, like you said, the barrel manufacturing capabilities. Like the barrel did not heat evenly or equally, and there were stresses in the barrel. And this particular gun happens to shift right. Another gun might shift left. One gun might shift up. Some guns might shift down. Another gun that's well known for this problem is the SVD.
Right.
The SVD is, of course, a DMR in the Soviet, well, what was the Soviet Union, now Russia. Slow fire, cold barrel, it's a pretty accurate gun. You heat it up, shots start wandering, and you start losing your precision.
Right.
This gun, after it heats up, which by the way takes only 1 mag, suddenly your zero has shifted somewhere. And so they're looking at this, and this is an unacceptable situation for a military rifle. We want to be able to engage and hit at 600 yards. That's one of the principles. And this gun cold could.
Right.
It can. The sights don't really lend itself to it, but it can. It can do precision fire. An SP1 cold, an old original M16, is a very accurate gun.
Absolutely.
Once it warms up, it starts shifting. So that changed, and they made these barrels differently as a result, not because they didn't want to stick with the pencil, but they didn't have the metallurgy or the manufacturing capabilities to do it, to make it do what they wanted to do.
Right.
Yes.
Now we do, and that is the reason why we have chosen pencil barrels. Now we went with Faxon, and I think it's important to point out that we were not approached by Faxon. We went out there specifically, in fact we did this at SHOT Show last year, we were looking for pencil barrels, and there were like 2 manufacturers we were able to find ahead of time, and Faxon was the first one that we approached at the show, and they were extremely receptive. They were aware of the channel, and they thought it was a very cool idea, and they were happy to provide barrels, so they're the ones that we ended up going with. They don't have necessarily magic technology. This is something other companies are capable of, and I'm sure there are some others out there, but we've had excellent success with Faxon, so we're very happy to put our InRange seal of approval on Faxon pencil barrels.
So what it boils down to is what you're saying is they did not engage us. We solicited them directly.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so the reason we solicited them directly, to reiterate some of that, is because I went around looking. We knew we wanted to do this project, and we're using SHOT Show as a place to research some of the components we were going to build into the What Would Stoner Do rifle.
All the manufacturers are going to be there.
Which is ironically the purpose for SHOT Show, actually, to a large degree. And so we were actually at SHOT Show for SHOT Show reasons. And Faxon was one of the very few that I could find that actually had pencil barrels prominently displayed and available. Right. There are others. I'm not saying that there are not. Right. And we have not tested their barrels, but we have no reason to believe that they couldn't do the same.
Sure.
But we went to them, and like you said, they were very open to it. And so in that regard, that was one of the very first component that would allow us to decrease the weight of the AR-15 system, but retain the original soul and spirit of what was the M16 when it was issued.
And it was at that point that we also decided to do 2 separate barrel lengths.
Correct.
So on yours, we took this to its basically the logical legal extreme. We can get the lightest weight barrel by having the shortest barrel, and 16 inches is the legal minimum to not have to deal with the NFA. So we want a 16-inch overall. In this case, we know we want a muzzle device on it, so we went with a 14.5 inch with a 1.5 inch permanently pinned on flash hider.
Now, if I could have had my preferences, I would have rather have had a standard birdcage on here. I happen to own an old school Gemtech Halo suppressor, and it would have been very cool to be able to suppress the 14.5 inch door kicker gun, but we wanted to have a greater differential between the 2 rifles. We wanted one to be, initially we said DMR, now we're saying rifle, but we wanted one to be a rifle / DMR, we wanted one to be a CQB oriented door kicker gun.
Right.
And the best way to do that was to have a bigger differential in barrel lengths.
Right.
And so to do that, we ended up going with Faxon's permanently affixed flash hider, which, by the way, is the same diameter as the barrel. It's kind of a neat design in that by doing this, you can actually take gas blocks on and off without having to take the muzzle device off. And since this is 14.5 inches and permanently affixed for legal reasons, it was the obvious choice.
Right.
The ultimate end result means that I cannot suppress this gun, not because it couldn't technologically be capable of doing that, but because we couldn't legally do it.
Right.
Yes. But that was what we went for that for.
So then for the rifle, we went with an 18-inch barrel, and we have a standard A2 flash hider on it. A2 works really well, guys. That's just because it's kind of funny, actually. Mil Cert, standard issue, both simultaneously means it's awesome, and it can't conceivably be any good.
That's true. You'll hear people say that mil-spec can mean both, right?
Right.
But so one of the things that we're talking about is that we were trying to retain the principles of the original M16, but some of the things that happened in the progression over time were not bad.
Right.
There were benefits.
Mhm.
Things occurred that were worthwhile. For example, the change to the 1 in 7 twist rate.
Right.
That gave the gun a much broader diversity of projectile choices.
Right.
Which is what we're doing with these guns. These happen to be 1 in 8.
Yep.
But 1 in 8 allows you to easily shoot 55s up to 80 grain bullets effectively.
Right.
That gives you a wide range of what you can do for ammunition.
Right. And by using, we designed these with the intention of using 75 and 77 grain bullets because they give you better terminal ballistics without being so velocity dependent as 55 grain ammo, which was one of the original problems, again, with the M16, was that 55 grain ammo was, yes, very effective at relatively close range when it had the velocity. When it lost more than about 10% of its muzzle velocity, the terminal ballistics kind of took a dive.
They start dropping off, and they
Right.
drop off to the point where it starts what's called ice picking.
Right.
So the 55 grain bullet requires a certain element of velocity, thus the 20-inch on the original M16,
Yep.
which allows it to do what's called cavitate,
Right.
or even fragment inside of an unstable medium, which is normally a human body. These are weapons of war, right?
Yep.
And so it would go in after a certain duration of time, starts tumbling and cavitating and fragmenting, and there's also something called hydrostatic shock. All that stuff is velocity dependent with 55s. 75s and 77s have a lower velocity threshold to do the same level or more terminal ballistics than the 55 equivalent.
Right.
However, there are other developments in that world, such right now we're seeing the M855A1,
Right.
etc. The point is, it isn't tied to the ammunition, but the 1 in 8 twist rate allows you to use any of them.
And because all of these things are less velocity dependent, we don't have to have a 20-inch barrel. We can drop it down to 18, lose a little bit more weight. And the thing with the weight is you always have to be attentive to fractions of an ounce or ounces, because if you don't pay attention to them, that's where pounds come.
Oh yeah, no, ounces turn into pounds quick.
Yes.
And so when we talk about this one being 14.5 inch and mine being actually we've determined this is the more specialized gun. This is the door kicker gun. And this being the rifle. The reason we went 18 is you don't quite need 20, especially with modern
Right.
ammunition options, projectile options. And then some people have said things, and I've seen it, why not go 16? Well, the reality is 18 kind of is a sweet spot
It is.
in terms of the velocity you're going to obtain.
Yep.
And the reality is we wanted these to be capable. If you happen to land up using 55 grains, you are not completely behind the 8 ball with the 18-inch gun.
Right.
You are, with a 14.5-inch gun, you can use 55s, but your terminal ballistics start getting closer and closer in. You have to really start realizing you're losing a lot of effective range.
Right. Yeah. Now, to go along with these, we need handguards. And there are only a couple things that you really want a handguard to do. And the main one is free floating. That was, again, a shortcoming of the original M16s. If you put pressure on that handguard or that gas block with, for example, your sling,
Or the sling swivel. Yep.
or a bipod, even that stupid clamp-on M16 bipod, way out here on the end of the barrel, especially with a pencil weight barrel, that warps the barrel, and you will be shooting way high compared to where you think you're shooting.
Which, by the way, this was another justification for adding mass to the barrel.
Right.
We see this even at two-gun. Guy comes out, and with a relatively heavy barrel, or even an M4 style barrel profile, never mind the original pencil barrel, and they go to a barricade, and instead of resting their hand on it, they rest the barrel on it, they start shooting feet high.
Yeah.
200 yards, feet. And you'll see the rounds going like over the target, and you're like, get off the barrel, get off the barrel.
Yeah.
What this tells you is that back then they didn't know better, I guess, or just couldn't design it into the gun. But the reality is that in 2017, there is no, and I mean no, I say this as an extreme statement, there is no justification for not having your AR-15 barrel free-floated. Don't do it.
The AR platform is very well suited to free-floated handguards.
Yes.
So we need to be free-floated. We need to have a way to attach stuff to the gun, presumably as low profile and unobtrusive a way as possible, and we need the handguard to be light. And you put all that together, and what we got was carbon fiber, M-LOK, free float tube.
So back in the day, the accessories for your M16 was a bayonet, which we know is obsolete,
Yep.
a magazine, which was low capacity compared to now by 30 or even 60, we'll talk about that in a minute, and a sling. Well, great. The world's changed. There's now night vision. There's multiple sighting systems. There's lasers. There's IR, visible, etc.
I mean, I think that carbon fiber is technically magnetic, and you took that thing and like stuffed it in a barrel of tactical and stirred it around.
Well, people are going to ask about all the accessories on this gun, and I'm going to be honest with you, we're not going into that in this video. But what you're seeing is,
but everything is there for a reason.
Everything's here for a reason. The door kicker gun is in its final guise. This is it.
And you know what? That thing is lighter than an SP1.
This gun with all this junk on it is lighter than this original M16.
Yeah.
So all this has a purpose on it. These are force multiplying things and technologies you want on a modern rifle.
Yep.
The light is obvious. The laser and IR is obvious. Well, maybe not obvious. We'll have a video about that.
Yeah, we'll touch on it.
Rail space for magnifiers and night vision, etc. But the reality is all this stuff, by starting with a base low-weight rifle, all this junk on this means that you still have not gone even close to the now M16A2.
Right.
Or the M4.
Yep.
And that's a principle of what Stoner was trying to do, was make this lightweight combat rifle.
Exactly.
Now, what we did not achieve is higher rates of fire.
Right. And deliberately so. That is everything is a compromise, and that is something that we have deliberately chosen to give up. Now, because we have stress-relieved awesome barrels, we're not giving up everything. You can dump a magazine through this and be like a minute different than a cold bore, but this does not have the capacity to dump rounds like an IAR.
No, and the original M16 was not designed for that.
It wasn't either.
The reality is the panic switch is there, but it's not intended to be used as a panic switch.
Right.
Select fire or full auto has application, bounding, overwatch, suppression. There are times to use it, absolutely, I understand that. Although it could be argued you don't need it, but it's a nice to have.
Yeah.
But that's something that's debatable. The point is, what you don't do with it is turn it to full auto and dump your entire combat loadout.
Right.
And in fact, the original M16, after a full combat loadout, the gun was either
Basically not operable.
down or at the point of malfunction, or completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So it wasn't meant for that. And we contend that there's no reason to turn your rifle into your squad automatic weapon.
Right.
This is a rifle that can sometimes do full auto, should it have that capacity. Right.
We should clarify, of course, these are semi-auto.
We have to be same legal reasons. This is 14.5. These are semi-automatic, not fully automatic. But in a military, guys, full auto is something you use with temperance. Right. And there are other discussions for that, and that's where the SAW comes in, or the IR might come in. That's a different problem. So the reality is, we can still use the same combat loadout. We shift maybe an inch, not 5 inches, when we get hot, and you have a gun that's lighter than the current day M16A2 or the M4.
So, all things being equal, you certainly have a lot of opportunity to add weight with a handguard. This is actually the only place on the guns where we have carbon fiber.
That is true.
It's the one that really makes the most sense. And we actually got these from Faxon because when we got the barrels there at SHOT Show, Nathan from Faxon was like, "Oh, and you need these carbon fiber handguards to go with?"
So we were also looking, we knew we were going to free float.
Yep.
There was no way we were not going to free float. Let me repeat, you do not build an AR in modern day without free float. You just don't. So we didn't know what our free float solution was, and we were looking for the lightest weight, but still sufficiently durable option on the market.
Right.
And I was not aware of their carbon fiber offering, although they mentioned it, and then I started researching as well.
Mm-hmm.
And after he recommended this, I looked and I'm like, I couldn't find a better option.
Okay.
So we went with it. And it has turned out to be 95% perfect.
Yep.
There's a couple things here that we do want to tell you about. First of all, the perfect part. M-LOK is good.
Yep.
M-LOK has been tested between M-LOK and KeyMod.
Mm-hmm.
KeyMod is okay. M-LOK turned out to be a little more resilient, so cool for that. M-LOK is very easy to mount accessories onto, as you can see. Without putting all sorts of covers on it, M-LOK provides a lot of airflow, which on this lightweight barrel you want.
Yep.
That's a good thing. However, even with all that airflow, at hard as hell, you and I fired major amounts of ammunition. There were stages I fired 90-plus rounds.
Mm-hmm.
This was not too hot to hold.
No, never was.
Never.
This totally does the job of protecting your hand as a hand guard.
And it does a good job of mounting accessories, and it does a good job of free-floating the barrel.
With one exception,
yes,
and that is the 12 o'clock position here. Then one of the nice things about this is it's relatively small in diameter.
Correct.
It's easy to hold. There are barricades that you can fit this in that you couldn't fit a lot of other things in.
Mm-hmm.
However, because of that, the gas tube is very close to this 12 o'clock set of M-LOK holes. And you really can't mount anything in the 12 o'clock position.
Not exactly true. You can put stuff at the very last hole.
Yeah, if it's beyond the gas block.
If it's beyond the gas block, you're fine. And
but you know what? On mine, gas block is directly under.
But there are screws that will fit. I've tried it.
Okay.
You have to be very careful with mounting stuff in the 12 o'clock position. At the very end here, where the gas tube steps up, you cannot.
Yeah.
Down here in the middle and up at the gas block, you can if you're careful with the screws you're using on your M-LOK mounts.
Okay.
But you don't want those screws touching the gas tube.
No,
Do not want that, or the gas block even worse.
Yeah.
Those are heat generation points. However, let me say this because I'm going to say it now. We never said you should never ever have backup iron sights. If you want backup iron sights, the 12 o'clock position at the end, if you do it properly, will mount fine with some Picatinny or something like that. What we did say is we were putting faith in the optics and therefore not using them. I don't have them for other reasons, which is another video.
Yeah.
But if you do want iron sights, the 12 o'clock position will work at the end if you're careful.
Yeah.
The other caveat I will make is that there's only one other spot. There are two metal bolts that hold the clamshell, well, not a clamshell, apply tension to the free flow tube to attach it to the upper receiver.
Right.
Those bolts do get hot. Now, so if you pick up the free flow tube like this, you don't feel the heat. If you happen to touch these bolts after firing a lot of ammunition, those are hot. So this does a good job of protecting your hand from heat unless you happen to touch these bolts. So the answer to that is don't
touch the bolts.
Yeah. But even at the 12 o'clock here,
the
gas tube, it was not so hot that it was a problem.
Yep, I was actually surprised and impressed by the fact that none of this, even sitting out at hard as hell.
No.
Normally I would expect the combination of the sun and the heat to make any handguard uncomfortable.
You touched on an interesting point. This is a real thing at Two Gun, especially with some of the aluminum handguards. We throw it out in the sun in August, and I'm not exaggerating. I have picked up my rifle and burned my hand and my face while shooting it from nothing more than ambient sun and temperature.
Yeah.
The aluminum retains heat in a way the carbon fiber did not.
Yeah, that's very true.
We haven't crush tested this or anything destructive test, and I wouldn't recommend that. However, I have dropped it, beat it up, and I have seen and I have cranked on these M-LOK screws with reckless abandon, and I have seen no problem with any of the carbon fiber free flow tube assembly.
Cool.
So in that regard, we have retained the soul, but changed a lot. High capacity, lighter weight.
Yep.
But the soul of what the M16 meant to be in a modern iteration.
And a lot of that is essentially in the barrel and the handguard.
Well over half of it is the barrel and the handguard.
Yeah.
So on that point, this is the very video where we certify, and we're using that term sort of as a joke, but it's
the official in-range stamp of hubris.
It's a legitimate, you like that. It's a legitimate statement. People keep asking us, what's this? What did you do? What did you do? Just give me the parts list. And we're not going to give you the parts list because we're not done with all of it.
Right.
We will give you the parts list when we're done. What we will say is at this point, the carbon fiber free flow tube and the pencil barrels from Faxon are absolutely good to go, certified as part of the solution.
Yep.
So we will have a list at some point of here's all the certified parts.
Yeah.
Right now we have not done a video yet, but the lower's not changing, the trigger's not changing, the hollow sun, believe it or not, is not changing, the free flow tube and the barrel's not changing.
Yeah.
So we're good to go on that.
If you're cognizant of it, you got the main guts of the rifle done.
We have not talked about some of the internals, and by the way, there's stuff in there that we haven't talked about.
That's true.
The internals do have a
little
point.
different.
There's some differences there that we're going to talk about.
If you guys enjoy this sort of thing, please do consider checking us out on Patreon. We are, of course, a 100% viewer-funded channel. We do get no monetization on YouTube. We depend on you on Patreon to make this viable and to support us. We do also, as a result, publish video all over the place. So if you're not subscribed on Facebook, check us out there. All of our videos play in their entireties with no ads on Facebook. And Carl, in particular, is very active on our Facebook page with the community. So a lot of good stuff, discussion to be had.
There's a lot of dialogue being had on Facebook. Yes.
If you can't afford to join us on Patreon, we totally understand. Best thing you could do for us is share the content with anyone you think would actually enjoy and appreciate it. We, of course, cannot depend on AI bots to be distributing our content when we're not monetized.
And one more thing to add to that, some of this stuff we went to vendors and solicited, and they did give us some of this.
Right.
The barrels and the free flow tubes did come for free.
Yes.
However, a lot of this we bought with money from Patreon.
Yep.
And some of the stuff that we've tested out, which turned out to be good kit, but not for our project, gets given away.
Yep, exactly. That's the other thing. Once a month we do a giveaway, randomly sent out cool gear to our Patreons.
$1 and above gets in on that, and some of the stuff we've tested on what would Stoner do that we were happy with, but not the right answer for us, will be given away through that process.
And there have been bits where we got multiple examples from a manufacturer so we can use one and give one away.
So there's a lot of that coming. So if you're a Patreon supporter, you may actually legitimately get some free What Would Stoner Do components.
There you go. We'll get you started.
Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. We appreciate it, and more to come.